Hi, very good morning. It's Jim from Mavstar. You know, over the last month or so, we've been talking about a lot about quantum computers, the double slit experiment, and I thought I'd just show you this, but there's something that you're not going to expect after I show you this, which might make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. And I think there is a correlation. I don't know exactly what the correlation is, but you know, I'll just leave it with you to think about and give me your comments in the section down below. Okay, so what he's done here is what you can do at home. I set this up within a few seconds, but the laser I've got is much more powerful, and it's capable of burning things. So I didn't have it on very long, and it did make my eyes go a little bit funny afterwards. I should have been wearing protective goggles, and I have got, you know, special laser goggles to wear, but I didn't. So what he's got is a spirit level laser, which is a safe laser to use for this experiment, and then he's got a diffraction grating of ranging in sizes, double slits. So it starts off, which I'll show you actually. Let's see if I can get to that point in the video where he actually demonstrates what he's done. So that's what it looks like. Let me see if I can get a better picture. So each one of those lines actually it hasn't focused very well. There we go. You can see that the size of those slits the gap gets bigger in between them, starting at 0.25 millimeter, then 0.50 millimeter, then 0.75, and then 1 millimeter gap in between them. But the point is this: if you fire photons, which is what is coming out, by the way, of your laser pen, you are firing literally tiny particles out of that pen. When it goes through one slit, it will produce just one line. When you fire it through two slits, something entirely different happens, and he's going to set this experiment up. Let me just see if I can fast forward now to the bit where he shines the laser light on this little stand he's got. So he knocks the light off in the laboratory, and you can see that's just the laser dot fired on the piece of paper at the back of, you know, probably about 10 feet away, and it produces just one dot. But then when he integrates the double slit into this, we get this. So up until the point where the photon, that single particle, if we just take one at a time, goes into the double slit, it behaves as a particle, and then once it passes through the double slit, it behaves as a wave. And this is what baffled scientists for a long time. So what he does is he now moves on to measuring the intensity of the light in the center. You can see it's very bright, and then it goes dark as a space, and then the light comes back as an intensity, but not as bright as the center one, and then it goes dark again, and then it goes a little bit brighter, and then dark, and then you can see the light is fading out as it goes to the right from the center along the x-axis. And then he charts this. So he puts a y-axis on there. Let me just so what he does is he measures the intensity of the light, which is the cross at the top of the y-axis, as the brightest, and then obviously the lower point is put an X where there's no light at all, and then he goes up again, so it's not as bright as the first light in the center, and he puts an X, and then he does it again as another X where there's no light, and then it gets a little bit dimmer, so he puts the cross not so high as the second one, and he repeats this. And then he takes the card off and he draws the pattern that emerges through the finger, and you can see through both sides we get this pattern emerge. And the point of this is this is what's baffled physicists for ever since the time they discovered it, you know, from the Young's days of when he was doing experiments with this and found this out. And in them days he didn't have laser pens, he uses alternative methods to do it. But if we just take from the center line and we look at that pattern, we can see that the intensity is very bright, and then it drops off and drops off and drops off. So we have a wave pattern over time, yeah. But you know, time and distance could be thought of as the same thing, and you're going to say, well, what are you getting at here, Gene? Well, I'm just saying that distance, if we travelled for an hour along a road, we would have moved a distance. Or we could also say we've got to wait an hour. which is a distance of time. I hope I'm not confusing you here, but my point is that this wave here, which I'm going to show you now, I'm just going to take this into another image. In fact, no, let's just do what I wanted to show you, because I don't know how to do this. Okay, let me show you something else now. This might surprise you. So we're looking at quantum physics here, quantum matter. We're trying to understand why, when things go through a double slit, why they interact with each other and produce a different effect. You know, we're using one product to get two effects out of it. So it starts off as a photon, you know, a small particle, and then once it goes through that double split, it interacts with the other particles going through the double slit and produces a wave pattern. Very spooky. And it's only under observation after this point. This is why he doesn't explain in this, or he doesn't show in this. It's only through measuring each photon when they go through the slit, or you know, you observe it through measuring, that it changes back to producing just two lines. That is really what they they couldn't get that round their heads, the physicists, and I don't think they quite understand what it is today, why it does that. So it behaves as a wave when it's not being observed or measured, but as soon as you measure it, it goes back to behaving like a particle, which means that those photons, if you fired them through the double slit and measured them, they would only produce two bands of light. But when you're not measuring them, they produce, you know, the wave pattern that we get, or the diffractive pattern of light. So let me show you something now which might get your mind thinking a little bit, so just to say the least. But all I want to do is if I can just say to you, look at that half of the pattern from the right hand side, from the centre to the right hand side, and see how it drops down as the waves get smaller. Have a look at this. So I immediately thought of this, and what we've got here is the last 3 solar cycles, 22, 23 and 24, and we can see during around 1990 we got the most intensity of sunspot numbers, and then it drops off just like the diffractive pattern of the experiment we was just looking at around 1997, and then it goes back up to solar cycle 23 about 2001. We got the highest intensity at that period, and then it drops back off around 2009 at the end of the cycle, and then when it comes back up to around 2014, we're at the highest intensity again. But I'm just going to in paint now, I'm just going to put these both images in there for you, and I'm going to draw a line, and you can see exactly what we're getting here is a diffractive pattern of what would appear something going through a double slit and like behaving in a waveform. And you know, only over the distance of time that we've been looking at the sunspots, it's behaving in exactly the same manner. This is a peculiar thing, I think. You know, that, you know, if we look at it again at 1990, we're at the highest intensity of sunspots. On the experiment, we was at the highest intensity of the diffractive light of the experiment going through the double slits. And then during 1996, 1997, there is no light on the experiment we just looked at, and there is no sunspots either. And then again at 2001, we got the highest intensity, but it is nowhere near the higher intensity that it was at 20, in solar cycle 22. We're getting the same pattern. I just wonder what the chances are of that. And I've not come across any other, solar physicist or physicist, for that matter, that has ever brought the correlation between these two. Is it a coincidence? If so, what are the chances of a coincidence like this coming about? Or is there synchronicity? Is there a reason for this pattern that we're seeing? And let's face it, we started off with the laser experiment at the beginning of the video, which was firing photons. And they were looking at the sun, which, guess what? Emits photons. That's strange, isn't it? Let's have a look at the both images again and just ponder that. So what I've done here is I've just drew a diagonal line, which almost touches the peak of every waveform. So starting at the center of the waveform, it's very bright, then it goes a little bit dimmer, and then a little bit dimmer, and then a little bit dimmer. But on the bottom I've just marked the spots where there's no light at all, and that's our diffractive pattern. That's what emerges when you measure the intensity of the double slit experiment. That's what we're getting. We're getting a thinning out of the light, or a dimming of the light, and we're also getting spots where there's no light at all. And we'll just go over and have a look at the solar cycles, and we get a very similar pattern. And this is exactly what I'm trying to bring over as a point to you guys. Why is our sun, over a distance of time, behaving exactly like the diffractive pattern of the particle going through the double slit, and then changing from a particle to a waveform? And look at the pattern, it's exactly the same. We start off at solar cycle 22 at the highest point of that diagonal line I've drew on there, and then at the bottom of solar cycle 22 we have no sunspots. On the experiment we had no light. And then at solar cycle 22 we have sunspots, but they're not as high as solar cycle 23. We have sunspots at the peak, but they're not as high at the peak as solar cycle 22. But after the solar cycle 23, we have no sunspots. On the experiment, we had no sunspots, but we had a graduation of the dimming of the light over distance. We got a dimming of the sunspots over time. You know, both of these charts, I don't think are by coincidentally showing us the same picture, because after all, you know, we are talking about light from the sun or light from the laser pen, but they're both firing photons. The photons that are coming out of the laser pen are exactly the same as the photons that arrive to the Earth from the sun. And then we have this unique pattern which is exactly the same. I've never seen this before. And, you know, I just thought I'd put these two things together and bring it to your attention. I'm sure you've never seen this before, but I bet you some other physicists may have pondered this. I mean, it's unusual. I've got one of these minds that put, you know, different things together. And I don't think that this is coincidental. Maybe it's synchronicity. We just don't know. But I thought I'd bring it to your attention because it's unique. And I've not seen anyone say anything about this. But, you know, our sun is behaving over time like that experiment. And the experiment was showing us a distance from the main peak of the light dimming. And what we've got is our sun producing less sunspots over time. I think there's more than a coincidence there, and that's why I thought I'd bring it to your attention. So, you know, give me your thoughts in the comment section on this. And big thanks to those of you yesterday that chipped in a couple of bucks. And if you want to support what we do here at the Observatory, there's a link down there in the description, or you can become one of our patrons. The link is there as well. Guys, I'll leave it with you and I'll wait for your comments. As always, take care. Bye for now.